Hello everyone and welcome to another Stepping Stone 2 podcast, and this one today is around what we would say is best practice helping an individual who's living independently to manage their money. And we're going to look at the problems that occur when people have too much autonomy, and then we're going to look at how it works where people have autonomy but also have the right support, the right knowledge base in relation to how to manage that money. So Trey and Nigel, I believe, have reached a point where it's become successful. I believe now that Nigel has moved away from that bad place he was in relation to the overspend. I think that the relationship between Nigel and Trey financially has moved on the stage, because initially Nigel fought Trey. He believed that he should have complete control of his money, and I don't doubt people that listen to this, when you eventually do, that you say, oh no, they should have complete control because that's their money. Well, actually it isn't their money, it's the taxpayers' money, but it's money to enable them to live a quality of life. And getting into debt is not a quality of life.
No, it's not.
So we're going to look at the historical aspects of both your relationship in relation to finance. And I'm going to start with Nigel. Yeah? At the moment, Nigel, before we get into the history with Trey and yourself, where do you think you are now in relation to your finances that you weren't way back when you were in debt? How's it feel?
Okay would be an odd word, wouldn't it?
So what's different then now about the management of money?
I am buying stuff with my money, but I'm not going,
Overspend?
what I'm trying to say is I'm not going, mad. Not kind of mad. Not going, because I used to go to the bank every day, and just getting money out willy-nilly. But now I've asked you and Trey to step in and say, look, this has happened, I've done this, can you help me to get back on track? And we have, and feeling better for it now.
Well, that's good, yeah, but obviously these are answering questions and we haven't given you a script.
No, it's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
What we've done is back in the 80s there was a word called empowerment, which I used to hate, but it was a word. And it was all about enabling people to have the control that we would expect to have. But they completely forgot the fact that some people didn't have the skills to do that. So therefore they packed them off to college courses and did money skills, which wasn't the real world, because you were sitting with false money in a classroom, if you're looking to get a classroom, and it wasn't in context.
No.
So it didn't really work as such. So proper empowerment for me was to work with an individual to enable that person to bring out what skills they had, bring out what knowledge they had, and then put that into context with support, which is exactly what's happened with Trey and Nigel. Now, when Nigel says that it's working okay now, that's a genuine statement, because it is. At the point when he was given the chance to handle his money and spend his money, can you remember how you felt about that, Nigel, when you would have the money yourself, physically, in a tin that you had control over? What were your feelings initially, before today?
Well, I was a bit, apprehensive, because I was frightened of going back to what happened before.
There was a real fear as well, wasn't it?
There was a fear.
Yeah.
But now I don't have that fear, and now it's now got a system where I'm spending the money. Yeah, I'm getting money to spend, but not as before.
Yeah, and that, folks, is real empowerment. And the reason why we're doing this podcast is so that we can, not in an arrogant way, but we can spread what we believe is best practice and the kinds of strategies you would put into place with someone, because not everybody is the same. Might be someone with less skills than Nigel, say, for instance.
Yeah.
But you would actually empower that person with whatever skills they've got, with support, to get to a good place where they have control as much as they can, but also you keep them safe. And this is what a lot of services are forgetting now. You have a massive responsibility to safeguard the individual with their own money.
Yeah.
And that's not happening. You know, many people wander around in communities with money in their pocket and they have no concept of how you manage that money. So I believe there's a massive responsibility on the services, if you're getting paid to look after people, to actually instigate that. And that clearly has worked for you, Nigel.
Yeah, it has.
And anybody listening to this podcast eventually, I hope you do take some pointers from this and that you put that into practice, because it works. We know it works. So I'm going to thank you now. I'm going to bring in Trey now, and she's going to touch on a little bit of the history that you know, touched on a little bit with Nigel earlier.
Yeah.
And then the transitional phases as to how we got to where we are now.
Yes, I remember it'd be about 4 years ago now, I think.
That was my keys, sorry.
Yeah, about 4 years ago, I think it was, you said that you got yourself in debt. You're getting bank charges, weren't you?
No, it was the friend centre.
Yeah, and so you asked for help. So we set up with yourself a system where we would help you manage your money.
Yeah.
And get you out of debt and sort out all the bank charges eventually, and then
I'll just stop you there a second, Trey. Sorry about the keys, everybody. It happens every week, literally. When we talk about putting a system in place for someone to manage the money, we are not talking about a diktat, as in this is how you do it and the person goes along with that. Because if you try to do that, people are already conditioned in services and they're going to go along with it, basically. So you're basically removing the empowerment and you're putting in place something you believe is right.
Well, I remember we had a discussion about what would be needed to get you out of debt.
Yeah.
And to get you a little bit of savings in your account to enable you to get things that you really needed. And it was a very hard time, because it meant that, you know, you had to sit and think about how you're using your card and how you got money out, and how you weren't able to control that at that time.
Yeah.
So we decided at the time that to help you manage your money on a weekly basis, we would talk to you about what was required getting out that week, and we would get the money out, keep the card safe for you, and you had that money for that week, and that's how we balanced it out. We also had a budget for your food every week, didn't we? It was kind of difficult, wasn't it? Because we were in a bit of a mess.
Was that the scratching around in the back of the trees now?
Because before you'd been going for your shopping like odd days through the week and just getting extra.
Yeah.
But that's when your list came in and you started the budget and see what food you had in and how you add what you had that week, and you know, just adding in what you needed to. So it helped with your diet, it helped manage your food, and it helped manage your money.
Do you think if you gave most people, a choice as to whether they did have a structural routine or not, what do you think would be the outcome?
I think most people were getting in a lot of trouble. I think they were getting a lot of debt. And Nigel was in real trouble, weren't you? You were getting to the stage where you couldn't pay your bills, and you maybe even had lost your flat. So
what would you say to the people who say, but it's their choice to do that, it's their money? What would you say to people who, because there are people out there, whether they be advocates or whatever, no names mentioned here, who would completely ignore the fact that someone's getting into debt, they're eating badly or whatever, living in quite bad conditions, but it's their choice. What would you say to them?
I personally would say that it isn't a choice, because that's allowing somebody to get in trouble, and the distress to them is awful. The responsibility for a care practice to keep the vulnerable person safe, it's their health, the roof over their head, the bills being paid, so they are not in trouble with money, and also managing money that is given to them by the government, because they should do audits of how that money's being spent, and they could come back on a client and say, we want all that money back, thousands of pounds. What happens then? Where does that money come from? So that person can get into an awful place.
I mentioned that because on another podcast we're going to look at the responsibility of services, because my take now is that many services, no names mentioned, aren't practicing that, and people are living in squalor, and people aren't being given the support they should be getting in relation to managing the money. They're overspending, quite often get into debt, and you can't ignore that. So we are going to do a podcast about responsibility, and I would put down to safeguarding.
It is, because there was things that you needed for the flat, wasn't it, Nigel?
Yeah.
You didn't have clothes that you needed, and the food went, the money went on mostly food and eating out and stuff.
Yeah,
so your weight was you're nearly 23 stone. So it was a bad situation all round.
Yeah, it was.
And there was times you run out of electric and gas, I remember.
Yeah.
And that was not a good situation to be. So yeah, it was pretty brutal at the start.
So that's the opposite end of
okay.
of okay.
Yeah.
And make no bones about this, folks, there are many people who have been allowed to live that way, and not just on their own, independent living, actually within services.
Yeah.
They've been allowed to live that way. So we are going to come back and do a separate podcast on that, and that again is done not because you're trying to be arrogant and say we're wonderful. It's something that's statutory. It should be in place if you take someone under your jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to that. Sorry, Trey, carry on.
So once we discussed that, and we took some time for you to try to understand how it had to be managed, so to get you out of trouble.
How did we do that?
Can you remember, Nigel?
What took place, Nigel, so that we could, get to the place we are now?
Well, we sat and talked about them, and
There's many discussions.
it was, yeah.
And that was designed to enable Nigel, empower Nigel to understand where Trey was coming from.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, I think we went through, didn't we? What you needed for the flat,
Yeah.
what you needed for you personally, like clothes and shoes and jackets, and what you needed to, say, keep your bills, what bills were required, were important, and what you needed food-wise. And then we said, right, we have to have a budget every week, and that budget is the essentials and saving up for what you need.
Yeah.
And that's how we did it. It took us quite a while. I think it took nearly 2 years, didn't it, to get
Yeah. It did.
to a okay place. So yeah, it was quite difficult, wasn't it?
And do you feel as though, because it's another area which often happens, people control people's money and rarely ever discuss it with them, or I remember that situation with your girlfriend Nigel where she had no concept, no idea how much money she had.
Yeah.
And it was only when I got somebody involved that she actually could look at the figures in her book and what she had in the bank or whatever, because people didn't believe that she could look at statements or things like that, but actually that's a quintessential part of that empowerment. Nigel was able to sit and look at his bills. And
Well, Nigel gets his bill. Nigel gets his bills. He gets his bank statements. You get to see them, Nigel, before me,
Yeah, I do, yeah.
and then you show me, and then I check through and see how it's going.
But on that, and I know this from experience, it's said in the choicey circles where it's that person's choice, it's their statement, it comes to them and they deal with it. Right? Quite often that it comes, they open it and then just put it somewhere. Now, what happens with you, Nigel, because this is the way it should work, the statement comes,
Yeah.
the person you're working with who's dealing with your finances, that's passed on to that person, which is Trey in this instance, and then you together work through the actual figures to see what you've got, so you know exactly what you've got, Nigel,
Yeah.
and then it's filed.
Yeah.
Yes, and I remember at the start we went into the bank and we organised for those statements to come every month.
Yeah.
So, and I got back statements, didn't I, to make sure I had to back track of what was required and that, and where the money was going, and what I knew we needed to save up for. And we organised that with the bank, didn't we? To make sure that you got those statements regular, and I could look at them as well. So yes, it was quite a bit of organising at the start. And it was something I don't think you actually thought about, bank statements and that. It was something you didn't really see much of, did you?
No.
At the time.
Well, a lot of people don't. It's, people who haven't got learning disabilities quite often, oh yeah, bank statement. They don't realise they're actually overdrawn or whatever until the bank sends them a letter saying you owe us such and such. So that's where we were. We're not going to dwell on the dark place because we moved on from there. What do you think, Nigel, was the pivotal, and by that I mean the turning point, of when you started to get more control of your money, but could also look at the feelings it would create for you? We touched on it earlier on there. So if we look at the petty cash situation, and that took place prior to Christmas, there's a reason for that, because I wanted to, not want, because that's a bad word, isn't it? And I want doesn't get. I envisaged that in order for Nigel to experience that emotion of, oh God, I feel really down now, so I'll go and buy a takeaway, I'll go and do whatever. Starting off prior to Christmas, and then you've got your money at Christmas, you may be lonely, feel a bit flat, and there's your money. So, do you think that was the pivotal point where things started to change for the better?
Well, we actually started in the August time.
That's right. We started back in the summer.
We had a little bit of a run into Christmas, and I remember we discussed about how much to have in the tin. You didn't want too much, and I agreed with that because you remember how you were feeling. The idea of having that money. Can you express how you were feeling?
It was nice to have the money there, but
was there temptation there?
There was. Much so, yeah.
But when we reviewed it,
you
remember when we sat down together?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Because this is why we're doing this podcast, because of what I believe is success. Do you remember when we talked about it? What you'd said, how you'd managed over Christmas having that money?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Because you had more, didn't you, over Christmas, because it was a Christmas period.
Christmas period, yeah.
I asked you the question, how did you manage guys over Christmas with your money? Do you remember what you said to me? You were quite open and quite clear about it. In fact, you were quite chuffed about it as well.
No.
I asked you about temptation. Yeah, did you feel as though, I've got to feel down today, so I'll go and spend some money? Do you remember the feelings over Christmas when you had control of that money?
Yeah.
Don't worry, because it's I remember stuff like that, but obviously it's quite a while ago.
Well, I didn't go out.
You said you managed it
well.
I
did manage it, well, and I didn't go out.
And you didn't overspend?
No.
I remember that. Do you remember that?
I remember that.
Yeah, I didn't overspend, no.
So that was actually a result. That was an outcome.
I think actually, Nigel, since we started this, I think it was August time, July, August time, you haven't overspent.
No.
There's been times when you've thought, oh, I need such and such, or I think there was a wee bit of a time when you had more coffees and
Star Trek DVDs,
chocolate and stuff, but I think that was just, I can do that, and then it evened out, didn't it?
Yeah.
Because we just chatted about, well, just be a wee bit careful because you think about your diet and that, and you took that on board, and it does even out now. And I think we discuss on a weekly basis. If you say to me, I need this and this week, the money changes. It's kind of like, but you like just a certain amount, but it does change if you have extras in a week. So you have never come back to me and said, I want extra all the time. You only say to me, "Oh, I need extra this week because I need that." It
Yeah.
runs in with things that you require on a monthly basis. So yeah, I've noticed that.
Why do you think that is, Nigel?
So I haven't overspent.
Yeah, which again, for
I
me,
haven't overspent now.
is true empowerment.
Yeah, because
You know-
we had like a trickle effect of
Yeah,
what you were getting out of the petty cash at first.
Yeah.
It was only this, and then we extended it.
yeah,
And then we're at a place where there's some things you would normally get by card or differently. You
Yeah.
came out of your petty cash.
did I?
So it was you becoming comfortable knowing that that money in that tin, you wouldn't go mad and just go and spend a lot.
No.
And we did discuss what would happen if that happened. You know, we'd
Yeah.
have to review it, but you didn't do that, Nige.
But that was a massive outcome, that.
Yeah,
You know, anybody listening to this, the reason it was a massive outcome is because Nigel worked hard with Trey to get to a point where he understood the importance of not doing that,
Yeah,
and then put it into practice. And you know, Christmas time, I think I wrote a piece on the blog for this. It's a difficult time for anybody, really.
it is.
You know, if you haven't got family and friends around you and you're on your own, then the temptation to imbibe lots of alcohol or whatever substance or eat copious amounts of food is there.
Yeah, it is.
And of course, because Nigel had already been in a dark place when he'd done that and got to 23 stone and got himself into debt, the fact that he got through Christmas, experience and loneliness, etc., although we weren't in contact, he still managed to get through, and then he was able to say that to us when we sat down on a review.
Yeah, after I think it was in between Christmas and New Year, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you know, the massive outcome that, and
Yeah.
you know, they're the kind of things that people should be looking at, you know, because it's important that Nigel feels as though he's got control,
Yes.
you know, but with support,
Yeah,
safeguarding. Because if he'd fallen back, you know, we wouldn't have beaten him up or locked him in the cupboard or whatever. But you know, it would have been okay. Let's get back to the table again and have a look at that.
I think as well, the other big thing I think, big achievement, Nigel, is you took on board saving up for what was needed.
Yeah.
And look at your flat, look at your living room, all the things
Yeah.
you've been able to do in this living room because you did what was needed with that money and managed it.
yeah,
And we worked together to do that. And you got on board with that because you thought, right, I need this, this and this. I'm going to save up for that.
yeah,
Because you used to say to me, "Oh, have you saved enough money? Is that coming in?" And I remember, I think you said to me sometime last year, "Oh, my bank balance is looking better. And we
Yeah.
can get stuff." I remember you saying,
Yeah.
and that's when we started this living room.
Yeah, there's not many people can say that,
no,
is there?
No,
So I think we'll round off now because we're
Yeah.
on to 20 to 12 and it's almost chip time. Well, it's actually chip time now. We're 10 minutes over.
now we are.
So this has been done to celebrate Nigel's achievements, which I think are massive, but also to highlight how we believe financial management can be successful if it's done in a certain way and you empower the person to be involved in that at
Yeah.
every quarter. And I don't want to hear people saying, "Oh, well, you know, but they don't understand it." Sit down with them and do it. They may well not understand it, but they're a part of that process.
yes, they
And
are.
there might be one little thing that can pull out of there and, "Oh yeah, I understand that." And even if they don't understand it, at least they're supported and safeguarded and they're a part of it anyway.
I think as well, it gives people, because this I noticed with Nigel, it gives people a little bit of an understanding of how important money is. It's not just something, bits of paper and bits of coin that you just do that with and buy.
What about
yourself.
Monopoly?
You know, there's things have value, and I've noticed, Nigel, that once you got on board with how money should be used,
Yeah.
you valued what you were buying.
Yeah,
It became something of value rather than just spending money. Would you agree with that, Nige?
yes, I do.
Yeah.
I agree with it. Yeah,
I've noticed that.
We'll untie you in a minute, guys, don't worry.
yeah.
So on that, now just go take away. Right, I think we'll round off now.
Yeah.
We'll just have a comment from each person about that. And this was done to share best practice because of the success that Nigel and Trey quite clearly achieved, and I know that because I've been monitoring for quite a while now. And I can sense that in Nigel because he's exuding that empowerment, which is something that a lot of people don't. You know, they wait until someone tells them they can do something.
Yeah.
And, you know, many members of staff actually create that with people. It's a control mechanism. You know, you can't be working with someone to help them to budget when you actually control them. It doesn't work. You know, you have to be aware of how that person is with you when you're going through it.
Yeah.
And that was something that you two built up, that relationship, a working relationship, where you each knew where the other one was coming from.
I think as well, I felt when I started it, helping Nigel with this was massive responsibility. I felt that quite acutely, that I needed to try and get this right because I needed to help Nigel to get out of trouble, and you're managing somebody else's life. It's a massive part of the life.
Oh yeah, but that's reciprocal as well because it's a
Yeah.
massive undertaking for Nigel as well,
Yeah.
because he could have taken the easy route, you know, and Nigel wasn't forced into this. This is something that he was complicit in. You know, he gave consent in a quite clear way.
Yeah.
So, you know, that to some people might say, oh well, that's just, you know, you work with people and whatever. It's a massive responsibility.
It is, yeah.
You know, and it's also a great undertaking for the individual who's actually under the jurisdiction of that person as well. So, to tell people now what you believe are the most important factors in the success that's been achieved, choose one and just say what you think.
What do you think, Nigel?
What's important, Nigel, to get to the point you've got to now and achieve so much success? One thing that you've had with Trey that you think is important for people to understand? Mine is trust.
Yeah, there's trust.
And you have to build that trust. Any one thing you think that stood out for you now that's been successful for you too?
Well, help manage the money. Help managing the money, yeah.
Yeah, the support.
Yeah, the support as well, support.
Yeah, because it was done in a way, because Nigel always had
Support.
a major issue with controlling women.
Yeah.
And he had a couple of situations when he was on course with me where people didn't approach Nigel in a way that you've done, you know, and he reacted in a way which they perceived to be aggressive.
Yeah.
Whereas I've never seen that with you two, because you know you've come in at the same level as Nigel, he's come at the same level as you. You know, when you've had a disagreement, you've talked it through and got to
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Nigel. I think it's communication, isn't it? It's being able
yeah.
to communicate with each other about what's going on and how we can work through it. And for me, one of the biggest things was always trying to find a way for me to help you understand what it is that, you know, I was trying to explain, or for safeguarding and that kind of thing. So I always trying to find a way for you to understand.
Yeah, that was quite obvious, that. And I think that for me is systematic instruction, where you go through, that doesn't work, we'll try that. If that doesn't work, we'll try that.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you've both been doing.
Yeah.
So, I think that's everybody's given a comment.
Yes.
So, as ever, when I end these podcasts, if anybody's got any comments, and you know, we did have a comment going back in time, which was quite aggressive and nasty, but we don't really want anything like that at all.
We don't.
Because if we do, we'll report you to the police. But if anybody's got any constructive comments or questions, please feel free to do so. And either myself, Trey or Nigel can post a reply. And I think that's a wrap.
Yes.
Thank you.